Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining Dorsey Ross on this episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. In this episode, Dorsey interviews another special guest that will give you hope and inspire you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ken, for joining me on another episode of the Dorsey Ross Show. Today, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Clay Boatwright, and he says happiness is a choice. And when faced with decades of extreme challenges, he provides that positive attitudes invigorate life, create options. We had not foreseen and improved the perspective of others. His late wife and him have 3 daughters, including identical twins, who both have severe autism and intellectual disabilities. Due to a faith-based experience when the twins were young, he had 2 full-time careers for almost 20 years, one to pay the bills and one to fulfill his purpose. He became a nationally recognized volunteer advocate for people with severe disabilities, often contacted by Texas legislators and media for insight on family with disabilities. 6 months after becoming empty nesters, his wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and passed away 18 months later. As a result, he launched Clay 2.0 to pursue a new life with excitement. Clay, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Dorsey. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, well, I'll start off with I like to start off with, just a simple question. What's your favorite movie and what does it reveal about you?
Oh, wow. Favorite movie would probably be Top Gun, the original, though I like the second one, the Maverick, as well. And I probably like both of them for the same reason. I like things that are very action oriented, things that don't bore me, movies that can maintain my attention, and just an ongoing excitement, and the good guys win at the end. So it's that's probably why I like them.
Yes, definitely. And it's funny you mentioned Top Gun because I was interviewing someone in my last episode, and she also mentioned Top Gun Maverick as well.
Oh, that's quickly becoming a favorite of many people.
Apparently, yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you and your wife handled your twins' diagnosis, and tell us, go into detail about what happened and how that came about.
Sure. So our twins, Paige and Mia, were born about 7 weeks early, which is not that unusual. And they were in the intensive care unit for a couple of weeks and then came home. And it was interesting because almost from the point of conception, we noticed some things were unusual about Carol's pregnancy that was different from our older child. And we didn't really think that much about it because all pregnancies are different. Well, we bring the twins home, and there were challenges. They cried a lot, or a lot more than their big sister did. It took them longer to eat. There were a lot of things that people just kept telling us, hey, they're identical twins. Everyone knows that twins take longer to develop. And plus they were premature. So we're like, okay. Well, it was when we went to the 24-month well baby visit. So they had just turned 2 years old, and we're at the pediatrician at the well baby visit, and they give you this list of 25 questions, these developmental milestones that they ask about, like can say certain words, can do certain things. And Carol, my wife, was holding one of our twins. I was holding the other, and filling out that form for the twin we're holding. And we get to the bottom and look at each other, and neither one of us has checked anything off the list. I'm like, well, that's not good. So we talked to the pediatrician. He sent us over to Easter Seals, which was a surprise. We weren't expecting that. And Easter Seals did an assessment and came back with their original diagnosis, which was intellectual disabilities, and then we added autism. Autism was added after that. So that's how we found out about it. And in my book, I talk about we went through the stages of grief, and so you go through the denial stage, and even then, people were saying, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with those girls; they're going to be fine." When you're in the denial stage, there's a lot of people to support you in that stage and help reinforce it. And then we went through the anger stage and the negotiation stage and so on. And then finally the acceptance part. And I think I got to the acceptance stage faster than my wife did. She was still very much in the, what did we do wrong? Or what did she do wrong? Looking to blame. And what made it more frustrating was we would go and have them tested for everything. We had a whole host of genetic tests, a whole host of internal everything under the sun. And everything came back normal, which most people would think that's good. Well, when you have two children who obviously there's something not right, having everything come back as quote normal doesn't really help. You don't really get where you're trying to go. And that frustrated Carol a lot. For me, I really wasn't that worried about the cause or anything like that. I was more worried about, okay, what do we need to do? How do we help them grow and develop as best they can? However God has designed them, what do we need to do to support that? So I was focused more on that than the cause of their disability.
Yeah, I know. My parents probably went through something similar to what you guys went through with me, because they didn't realize that I was going to be born with a disability until I was born as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the questions that I see on your bio is, you say, the question is, why do you believe your twins' disabilities are part of God's plan?
Sure. So I've been blessed in my life with 2 episodes where I attribute it to God giving me absolute clarity on something. And it's not a matter of me hearing voices or anything like that, but it's in both situations, it was occurrences where I had an immediate attitude change or a certain a revelation in my head that there's no way I could have cooked it up on my own. So the first one relative to this is when Paige and Mia were around 4 years old. And it was a Friday night at home, and the twins were upset. So they were having some serious behavior meltdowns. Paige and Mia cannot speak. So they used behaviors. When they were younger, their behavior is how they communicated. And so they could be very upset about something, and you never know it or never know why. So they were upset. They were having meltdowns. Our older daughter, she was upset because of everything going on. Carol, my wife, she was mad. So I did what any good father, husband, leader would do. I went to bed. And I thought, you know what? I can't fix it. Everybody's safe. We'll deal with it tomorrow. Hopefully everybody will have a good night's sleep. So I went to bed, and I'm laying there saying a prayer to God, and I was mad. I was mad at God. And I remember saying, God, why did you do this to Paige and Mia? So why did you let them be born with these disabilities? And to be blunt, why did you do it to me? Because this is not what I signed up for. And that question, why did you do this, was on my mind as I fell asleep. Now, I don't usually go to sleep mad, but if I do, it's almost like the emotions marinate overnight, and I wake up the next morning madder than I was the night before. Well, that Saturday morning, I woke up and I had a smile on my face. I was excited. It was like fresh wind getting put into my lungs. I was ready to conquer the world. And the very first words that entered my head were to help people like Paige and Mia, which I immediately interpreted as to help people with severe disabilities like they had. Well, knowing my kind of priorities, work, focus at the time, that's not something I would have thought up on my own. And as sure as you and I are having this conversation right now, I believe I fell asleep asking God a question, and he sent the Holy Spirit and answered it. So 2 great things happened at that moment. Number 1 was it happened. Number 2 was I had the wherewithal to realize it had happened. So I thought for a moment. I said, well, action must be taken. I've had this revelation, which sounds like a very churchy, Bible-y sounding word, but it's like, I didn't come up with it. So I have to do something. So
Right.
I did what millions of Americans, millions of people around the world do every day when they have questions. I Googled it. So I went to my computer. I sat down there and I typed basically 4 words: intellectual disabilities, Dallas help. And up came an organization I had never heard of before called the Arc of Dallas. I soon found out that the ARC system in the United States is the oldest series of nonprofits helping people with intellectual disabilities. So I looked at their website. I said, well, this looks like an organization that helps people like Paige and Mia. And to compress the next almost 20 years into 30 seconds, I reached out to them on Monday. I was on their board of directors 2 weeks later. I became their next board president. Going through that, I was meeting families. I was understanding issues people were having, the lack of services and so on. Then I got involved in the statewide organization, which enabled me to meet legislators down at our state capitol in Austin. I was doing advocacy work with Health and Human Services, meeting all of their senior leadership, understanding the system, understanding how to get things done. And it culminated with me getting appointed by the president of the United States, to a presidential advisory committee. So along that path, I was meeting a lot of people and I was learning a lot of things. And as I would meet families and meet people with disabilities, I could share with them what I learned and help them get the assistance that they needed. So I was actually able to fulfill that answer to help people like Paige and Mia, and that really became the focus of my life at that point. So, I tell people I had 2 careers, one that paid the bills and one that was the focus. I'm very blessed to know thousands of people. 95% of the people I know have absolutely no idea what I do for a living, but everybody knows what I do for free.
Right.
And that's because I fell asleep mad at God on a Friday night. And the blessing of all that, to me, is I hope I've been able to help people, and I know I have, so that there's satisfaction in that. But all the people I've met, the experiences I've had, those appointed to a advisory committee in Washington, none of that would have happened otherwise. And Paige and Mia, basically, their disability became the inspiration for why I'm here.
Yeah. So in other words, don't go to bed asking God a question.
Well, no, what it means, you can go to bed asking God a question. You just have to be prepared for the answer.
Exactly.
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is get an answer and say, nah, I don't want to do that.
Right.
That would be a very unproductive experience.
Well, from what you just said, I got a couple of questions out of that. And my first question is, how are your daughters doing today, and what are they up to, and how are they handling life?
So Paige and Mia are in a very nice group home, not too far from where I live. So it's a regular house in a traditional neighborhood. You drive by, you'd never guess anything is unusual. Their disability is very severe, so they do not speak. They need help with all activities of daily living, as it's called in the profession. So they need help with everything bathroom related. They need help getting dressed, getting undressed. They can feed themselves, which is good, and they are mobile. They can walk under their own power, so that's good. But they need 24/7 care. They need to be supervised at all times. So they're doing well. They transitioned out of high school last year, so they're in a rehabilitation program now that gives them things to do. And I see them at least every week, at least once a week. So I'll stay engaged that way. But they're doing well. They're actually doing very well. But with Paige and Mia, success is when there's nothing major happens. So if status quo is maintained, usually that's a good sign.
Yeah. How did you? I mean, you talked about it, a little bit when you mentioned about you got appointed to the presidential advisory board. What was that like? And how what was the details of you doing that?
So I was presented with that opportunity to join, which I of course did, and it was interesting because there were people from all over the country, and you could kind of see there were two groups. I mean, everybody had the same objective, so not questioning anyone's intent, but from where people came from, you could tell different perspectives. So you had members who had either a disability themselves. So we had a lot of folks with disabilities on the committee, or family members like myself were there. But then you also had people who are professionals in the disability community, and yeah, that's magnificent. They have dedicated their careers in that way, which is wonderful. But in some cases, in some discussions, it seemed like we were having they were taking an academic exercise to it, where they would speak from theory as opposed to those of us who were living it every day. And you're like, it would make for heated discussion, and again, not arguments. Well, heated's an overstatement, but you could tell. There were sometimes someone would say something, and I'd think, "You've never actually done this, have you?" It's like, this is what you're saying. I don't disagree with the theory of what you're saying, but it ain't quite that easy to execute sometimes. So it looks really good on paper.
And here's another question I came up with, and it's a little more, deeper maybe question. But do you have any regrets, whether it's, with your own life or with, with what you've been through in your life, or your situation with your daughters and whatnot?
Not really. I wouldn't say I have any regrets. Now there were probably times where, if I had known then what I know now, I maybe would not have gotten as frustrated about some things, or I might have pursued certain things a little faster. But I wouldn't say I have any regrets, which is a blessing. And trust me, I make 20 mistakes a day, and I just hope that I can find them before they cost. If I can find the 19 of them and fix those before anybody notices, that's a good thing. And hopefully the 20th one won't cause too much damage. So I'm certainly not. I like all of us. I've got my own fair share of issues. It's just a matter of how to mitigate them. One of the things I talk about quite a bit is a lot of times problems and situations are presented to us that are out of our control. We so many times like to think, well, I'm intelligent, I'm patient, I'm prayerful. I can chart my own destiny. Well, maybe not, because sometimes things just happen. Life just happens that we can't control. What we can control, however, is our response to it. So how do we choose to respond? So there's a story I tell where I was talking with someone one day, and a woman who kind of asked me my story. And I said, "Well, that'll take a while," and I shared some highlights, and her response was, "Well, we all have experiences and challenges, baggage and drama." And I said, "Well, yes and no. We do have experiences and challenges. That's absolutely truth. We do have experiences and challenges. But baggage and drama are optional. It's all in how you choose to look at it. And happiness is a choice." And I think that's something that we often forget, and particularly when we're going through a deep crisis situation, whether it's, say, raising twins with disabilities, and there's no owner's manual for that. You're making it up as you go along, and you're screwing stuff up, and you're just hoping to get through the day, and there's frustrations and disappointments and so on. And it really is an attitude adjustment, and saying, okay, I'm not going to let this suck me down into the sewer. I'm going to look for the positives. What can I learn from it? What do I need to do to not get frustrated so I can be as effective a father as possible? And it really is our choice on the attitude we choose to take, because God had it in his plan for Paige and Mia to have their disability. And there's absolutely nothing I didn't know it in advance. And there's nothing I could do about it on the backside. So my choice was, how did I choose to respond to it to maximize their potential, to maximize their God-given potential?
Yeah. With the church that you attended in Texas, did they support you when your daughters were young? And do they still support you to this day when you need help, when you need encouragement in your life or in their life?
That was what you were asking about, the church?
Yeah.
Yeah, the church.
Yeah, did they help you and did they support you?
That's a bit of a complicated story too. So Paige and Mia were born. We've been very active in church, Carol and I, since the day we got married. So we were attending a church, and we were involved in a lot of Bible study and so on. And Paige and Mia were born, and they're a couple of years go by, and their disability is diagnosed. And as they continued to get older, they became a handful. They were kind of tough. And keeping in mind, Carol, I went to work every day. So Carol was the stay-at-home mom, raising the boat-right circus, as we called it. And Sunday morning was her respite time. That was a chance for her we put the kids in the nursery, or put the kids in the children's program at church, and she got to spend a couple of hours with adults talking about adult things and talking about faith and going to church. Well, one day I got home, and Carol said that the church had called that day, and they needed either her or me to be with the twins at every time they were there. So we had to be in the classroom with them. And it's because the church didn't have the resources. It was a pretty big church, but they didn't really know what to do. So their thought was, well, we need to have either Clay or Carol here. And they did not have a special needs ministry at all. So even though we loved that church, at that moment, we decided we had to leave. So we never went back. So we found a church that had a disability ministry, a special needs ministry for children with disabilities. Called, talked to them about it, went them there. And so that then became our gauge on, we could only go to a church that had a ministry that could help minister to our children. And it's amazing. You don't realize the number of churches that do not have one. And it's one of those that you don't know until you know. You don't know what you don't know. And it is a missed opportunity for a lot of churches. And what I've learned is that for a church to develop a ministry is, first, the senior pastor and the leadership have to decide that that's something they want to do. They have to recognize, is this a group of people who are unchurched or who are unchurched, who need the word of God, who need to hear what he has to say? Are we going to do what's necessary to enable that to happen? Or are we going to say, no, that's too much work? But to do that, it does take resources. So I'm not criticizing every church that doesn't have a special needs ministry, but I am criticizing the churches that have the resources to have one but choose not to.
Right.
I had a conversation with a pastor one time, and he said, "Well, Clay, which disabilities should we serve? All of them?" And my response was, "Well, yes." Or let what we can do is, why don't we start with the people God created? Oh, I'm sorry, that would be everybody. So I took it as though what that would be like him asking, what races should we serve? All of them. I mean, how do you have that conversation? And I know I knew what he meant. I think I knew what he meant, but I needed to present it back to him to say, okay, I'm pretty sure this is not how you meant it to sound, but this is how it sounded.
I've been traveling around, 16 years now, sharing my story, and I could probably count on my one hand, how many times I've been to a church that have had, a special needs ministry, and like you said, it's very rare unfortunately, for churches to have special needs ministries.
No, and I think what happens in most cases is the church, and I'm going to kind of defend churches who don't have one, is
Sure.
they don't they don't know it's a problem until it's a problem. So it's not until Well, so a church near me is Stonebriar Community Church, which is pastored by Chuck Swindoll, and Chuck Swindoll is a fairly well known international pastor, and they have a very good special needs ministry. That's the one we went to after our previous church told us that we had to be involved in the class every day. We went to Stonebriar. Well, the reason Stonebriar has a really great special needs ministry is Chuck Swindoll's grandson has autism. So yeah, he clearly in his own family, he saw the need and made sure that they built that into the church. And I think when you look at other churches, it's usually when either maybe a pastor or a senior leader in the church has a child or a family member with a disability, that's the inspiration that they need to go ahead and get one developed.
Right. What are the top things that families with disabilities must do?
What are the top things?
Yeah, the top 5 things that families with disabilities must do.
So I actually have a chapter in my book. It's called the top 5 things for families with disabilities, and the number one thing, this is far and away the number one item, is get help at home. Okay, so one of the things that we were very challenged with is how to manage this boatwright circus. And my wife was trying to do it all by herself, and I would get home in the evenings and do what I could, but after a while it really weighed on us heavily, and we were looking for people to come work with us. And sometimes we would put an ad out on the internet and someone would come and they would meet Paige and Mia and they'd be like, oh, we can't, that's too big of a challenge. We can't handle that. But then we eventually found some services that would help. So getting help at home is far and away the number one. The number two is to get on the list for your state's Medicaid waiver programs. So every state has access to funding from, it's a federal and state shared expense. 60% comes from the federal government, 40% comes from the state. And these are Medicaid dollars that are set up to help people and families with disabilities get various services. So getting in a lot of states have waiting lists. Texas, for instance, has a waiting list which is over 10 years long. And other states are similar. Some states don't have much of a waiting list. So find out within the state what is the mechanism to get either on the waiting list or to take advantage of those services. And that helps a lot of ways. The third thing is to take advantage of all community-based programs. So a lot of churches will have a Friday night respite program, for instance, or here in this area, the Dallas area where I live, one of the park systems has a monthly program for young children with disabilities to enable their parents to go have a night out. So whatever the service may be, some movie theaters will have special screenings of movies that are targeting guests who have autism and their families, so that first they'll adjust the sound down, they'll adjust the lighting so it's not as difficult. And the benefit is if someone decides to scream in the middle of the movie, nobody really cares because we know the drill. Those are our peeps. We're good with it. So take advantage with the services. Also, number 4 is, as we were just talking about, find a church that welcomes your unique family. And we talked about that at length just now. Everybody needs to be exposed to God's word, including people with disabilities who we may not know what they're picking up on, but it's important for them to be in God's house because they're part of God's family, just like the rest of us. So they need to be in God's house, just like the rest of us. And I often say that God has blessed us with unique gifts with our children. And it's our obligation to share our gifts with as many people as we possibly can. So a lot of parents believe, well, I'm the only person who can take care of my child. Really? I would seriously question that. There may be some level of medical fragility where there may be some truth to that, but that's very, very rare. My ego is not such that I think I'm the only person who can who can take care of my children. And a lot of times it is kind of an ego thing. And as a father of two children with disabilities, I can say that. Other people can't. And the last one is get involved. I got involved in advocacy and learning the system and so on because of that Friday night that I talked about. And not everybody will have that experience, but I've never totally understood people, and I'm specifically speaking to men, to fathers, who say, well, I don't have time to get involved because of my work, because I'm too busy. Okay, well, we're all busy. Nobody gets special credit for being busy. Okay. But I've wondered, well, you claim that your family is your top priority. And okay, you're earning a living. I get it. You're earning a living to pay the bills. Got it. I understand. But you can create time to get involved and to bring your talents and resources to serve the greater community. And at the same time, learn. I mean, I learned a lot of things. Most things that I learned about the system came as a result of me volunteering and getting engaged with it. And, I'll meet parents who their child is a couple of years away from transitioning out of high school. And they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I try to help them, to show them options and things to do. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, where have you been for the last 20 years? I mean, it's not like their disability started last Thursday, and all of a sudden, this is thrown at you. And again, that may sound harsh, but I didn't have one child with disabilities. I had two children with severe disabilities. So the excuse of, well, I'm too busy doesn't really fall well with me.
Yeah.
So that there's that.
What do you do to maintain a positive and upbeat attitude?
Several things. Number one would be recognizing that even in tough times, God is always with us. Okay. So many times God lets us experience difficult challenges because he knows that challenge will mold us in some way and position us for something greater down the road, or a service to others down the road. We don't know that at the time. We're just mad that we're in that situation. But I try to remember there is a reason for being in a difficult situation, and I'm trusting God in that he has this. Another thing that I discovered a long time ago, and I've been kind of developing almost a sermon around this in my head, and that is the importance of appreciation. Now, so often we get focused on our expectations. So here's what we expect of our children. Here's what we expect of our friends. Or here's what we expect of our spouses. So we're caught up in what we expect. Well, it dawned on me, I really don't have a right to expect anything. The only thing I have a right to expect is respect. So we should all respect each other. Okay, so if we have basic respect for each other, okay, that's expected. But anything beyond that, I don't really have an expectation for. What I'd rather focus my energy on is not telling people what I expect of them, but rather what I appreciate about them. So appreciate them as a person, appreciate them in whatever capacity I know them. And what I've discovered is that when I share my appreciation for other people, it not only brings a smile to their face, but it makes me feel better. It's kind of like when you give money to someone who's in need. The blessing is both ways. It's not just the person who benefits from the money; it's the person who's giving. The same thing is true with appreciation, and appreciation is a form of currency. And I think by doing that, so recognizing that God is always with us, and number two is appreciating what we have and appreciating the people around us. Those two together are really how I'm able to maintain a positive outlook. I never second guess. I never do what ifs. There are people who sit around doing what ifs. Oh, what if I had done something differently? And they create this better utopian image of their lives would be so much better. And they totally ignore the fact that there'd be stuff happening on that path that they're not aware of. And there's actually a psychological term for that utopian perfect world that we create in our heads as a result of what if I had done something different? And that term is called a fantasy. So I don't waste time doing what ifs, and don't waste time doing second guessing. Just focus on the future and approach it with enthusiasm.
Right. Well, after we get rid of the end here, tell us where we can find your book, and if people want to contact you, how do they do that?
Okay, so the book is available on Amazon and also barnesandnoble.com. The title of the book is God's Plan, Our Circus. So God's Plan, Our Circus by Clay Boatwright. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. If you go to clayboatwright.com, ClayBoatwright.com, you can read a little bit about my history, and you can buy the book through there if you want to do that. But that's how you can get it.
Okay. And as we get rid of the end, what is an encouragement that you would give to our listeners?
An encouragement?
Yeah.
I think the best encouragement I can offer is knowing for a fact that whatever crisis you're in right now, try to recognize that God is having you in that crisis for a purpose, and it's hard to see that, but you're in that crisis for a specific purpose, and the crisis will come to an end. It's like driving down the interstate, and you drive first and everything's fine. Then all of a sudden you find yourself in a storm, and it's a torrid storm, and it's raining, and you can't see out the front windshield, and you're scared and you're nervous. Those storms happen. 100% of the time, you drive through that storm, and there's daylight on the other side. So just remember to persevere through the storm, and you will get to the other side, and it'll be brighter than it was before. So that's probably the best way I can think to phrase it to people.
Amen. Well, Clay, thank you again for coming on the show today. We greatly appreciate having you.
Thank you, Dorsey. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Guys and girls, we thank you again for coming on and listening, and hope you share and like and are encouraged by what you have heard today. And until next time, have a great day. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for joining Dorsey Ross on this episode of The Dorsey Ross Show. Please like, share, and tell others about the show. Also, please check out the other podcast episodes. And if you would like, donate to this podcast and buy Dorsey a coffee. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.